The paranormal is an enigma. Since the dawn of our species, things that seem outside the realm of understanding have been dubbed supernatural. Over time, science have helped us measure, predict, and quantify this reality, yet there are still unsolved mysteries and unexplained phenomena that plague our attempts to rationalize this world. Ghost sightings, near-death experiences, and the psychic phenomenon, just to name a few, are among the subjects science dismisses as flaws in perception, hallucinations, and outright delusions. During this program, we attempt to bridge the gap between diverse viewpoints and air out the opinions of experienced individuals in the fields of investigation, metaphysics, and skepticism. Welcome to the Supernatural Symposium. Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Symposium. I am your host, Justin Brown, and we are presenting episode 4 tonight for you folks. Tonight we're going to be talking about paranormal encounters in general. The question I posed for tonight's panel and to you is, why do some people experience the paranormal, see ghosts, have strange feelings, so on and so forth, even the psychic phenomena, and others do not? Is it an aspect of the mind that's an imaginary or delusional, or is there some reality, objective reality to these experiences and encounters? We're going to ask a very diverse panel tonight. Real quick, there, I do have them up. So what we're going to do is allow these folks to introduce themselves. But before we do, here's the ground rules. Please to keep the chat clean. I know we have a lot of people in Live Paranormal that are tuning in. If you're new to the show and have a question for our guests, please ask them in the comments and be patient. We will get to them and we will ask each one of them the question, unless you have one specifically for one of our guests. But without further ado, we're going to get into the show. Let's introduce each other one by one. We'll start with Cailleach. Let us know what your name is, what you do, and any credentials at all.
Well, yeah, I'm Cailleach Bheur. I'm a magician. I'm a hypnotist. I'm an atheist and debunker of all sorts of supernatural, mythical claims and events. Been doing it for about 20 years, and I've yet to see anything that I can't explain or replicate. And when I say seen, I mean live. I don't mean YouTube clips and stuff. But yeah, if I go to people and go to these events, I've slept in graveyards, I've slept in haunted houses, been at, done all that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's about it, really.
So you're perfect for our Skeptic panel tonight.
well, thank you very much. And thanks very much for inviting me, by the way, as well.
You're very welcome. You can thank the friend who tagged you in the post in the Skeptic group that we're a part of, and here you are, and hopefully we will become friends and learn to appreciate each other's viewpoints.
Yeah. All
right. Let's go to Brandon real quick. Brandon, give us a quick rundown of who you are, what you do.
Sure. My name's Brandon Massullo. I'm a clinical therapist, an author, and a parapsychologist in Northeast Ohio. I have graduate degrees in counseling and also in psychological research methods from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. My research was on a lot of different things in Scotland, but primarily around paranormal experiences, individual differences, ghostly encounters. I've been fascinated with the paranormal for about 20 years. I've spoken at the Parapsychological Association's 60th anniversary celebration. Within the last year and a half, I've actually been more out in the paranormal field. As far as I wrote a book called The Ghost Studies, and I have a website that I have a blog on. So been doing more of that, been more in the public eye recently. And just excited to be here. I like the idea of having a panel better than just an interview, question after question.
Right, and I had the privilege of interviewing you on one of my other shows, and then I met up with you at an event because we do live in the same state, I believe, in Ohio, right?
Yep, yeah.
And you got to give me a copy of your book. I have not finished it yet, but when I do, I promise I'll give you a review, a honest review, but so far it was exactly what I expected. It was very well researched and very good.
I do like my references. Yeah.
That's good. It's important to me. All right, so it's good to have you here, and we're looking forward to hearing your viewpoint on the subject matter. So, last but not least, we have Katie Turner. What's up, Katie?
Hey, how's it going? I'm up here in the very cold Canadian winter, and I was born in the wrong country. Let me tell you that way. It's pretty cold up here, and it's not getting any warmer anytime soon. So I'm a psychic medium. I am a lead paranormal investigator with the Canadian Supernatural Research Society, and I am also an Access Consciousness Bars practitioner or facilitator. I have been psychic my whole life, and I decided to develop a team basically to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. And so we go into different locations, whether it be businesses or homes, and we try to investigate. We like to differentiate from different teams. We don't call ourselves ghost hunters, but we like to go into locations and find out why the activity is happening rather than just trying to find the activity. I'm a full-time psychic in terms of doing readings, and I'm also part of the television show Paranormal Survivor, which airs on T&E in Canada and Destination America in the States. We're all over the world, but predominantly it's Canada and the U.S.
Awesome, and very, very happy to have you here, and of course, you're going to have your diverse and interesting outlook on the paranormal, what it means to you, and hopefully, we have a very good discussion on what you think or why you think people have paranormal encounters and others do not. I would love to hear your viewpoint on that. All right, so thanks everybody for being here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please do not be shy about hitting that share button. We want everybody to know about the Supernatural Symposium. We want everybody to learn about the guests that we have on the panel. We want to promote the work that we do and hopefully strengthen not only the paranormal community, but the community as a whole and, in many subject matters across the board. So why is it that we, experience things that seemingly appear to be ghosts, seemingly appear to be hauntings, premonitions, stuff like that? We're probably going to branch off into other things because this is kind of vague and can go into other subject matters. But we're going to ask the panel up front why they think people have these experiences. And please ask questions here in the next 10 minutes. We'll probably start addressing those. But we're going to get this show on the road. We're going to start with Brandon real quick. Now, Brandon, I know that you have opinions and thoughts on the subject matter. Why is it that you think that some people have them and some people don't? Have you ever addressed this question solely?
Yeah. I think it's one of the biggest questions that's really out there. It seems like there's some people in the world that have numerous paranormal encounters, ghostly encounters, and then other people who have zero. So the idea sometimes is, these people might be making it up or this or that. The truth is, I really don't know the answer to that. I say when I did my research at the University of Edinburgh, I focused on a subset of the population that I felt was what they classified as environmentally sensitive. And when I talk about being environmentally sensitive, I'm not talking about psychic sensitivity, like John Edwards or Chip Coffey or anything like that. What I'm talking about is simply being affected by the environment to a higher degree than the normal population. So as humans, we're all affected by and react to the environment in different ways. And it's kind of been suggested in past research, as well as some of the research that I did, that the environment affects certain individuals more than others, and it leads to all kinds of environmental conditions and dysfunctions. People who are really sensitive to the environment, when they walk into a room, artificial lighting, fragrances, even small things like that, they have reactions to them. So what they found in the research is this subset of the population that's environmentally sensitive, they have way more paranormal experiences than the general population. The research that Michael Jower did shows that those people who are categorized as environmentally sensitive have 70% of those people have some sort of paranormal experience, which is a huge percentage of the population, or of that subset of the population. So what's great about it is, environmental sensitivity, there's some science behind it, that it exists. And if we could sort of correlate, if we can find out what is it about this population that they have more of these paranormal encounters as opposed to the general population, then that might point us in a direction to look at. So a lot of my research has been in that. So I would say that those who are classified as environmentally sensitive, or who are just more aware of the environment around them, or the environment affects them differently than others, they tend to have more paranormal experiences.
Right, and there's so many factors. It seems like that's one of the factors that could be causing, or leading to some type of answer to why, some people experience it and some people don't. So I love everything you said there, and hopefully we can progress in that field of research and find even more answers, because, I think it goes along with a lot of the cultural beliefs at the time and how they're ingrained and passed on to our children, and a lot of those things are taught, but there's a lot of people who question the psychology behind what you believe and why you believe. It can be complex, so hopefully we can shed some light on that. Now, Cailleach, I want to know from your perspective why people experience these things, why people do not. What's your take on it?
Essentially because they want to. When you want to believe in something, you'll see it more. It's like if you buy a brand new car. Once you buy a brand new car, you see the same car on the road all the time, and it seems like a coincidence, but it's not. When you want to look for something, you'll find it. A belief for me, a belief is irrelevant. Something either can be tested, proven, and demonstrated, or it can't. And a lot of these people say about the paranormal is that it can't be tested, it can't be examined, and it can't be proven. What is a ghost? What is paranormal? What does it mean? I think you have to define what it means first. And if you ask 1,000 different people what a paranormal experience is, you'll get 1,000 different answers. I think essentially belief comes from what you want to believe. When you want to believe it, you'll find it.
So confirmation bias is pretty much what you're saying.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah.
All right. I do believe that is definitely something people do need to realize and consider. I think that does happen. I find. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Psychologically wise, it's so easy to fool the brain. The brain can be fooled in a plethora of different ways. That's how I make a living, fooling people's brains. I was a magician. Optical illusions. It's so easy to fool the brain. And when these people have a paranormal experience, they don't really look at what's happening or what it was. They think it was a ghost. That's enough for them. They don't sort of actually go and look, see what it was. Is it a creaky window? Was it a breeze? Was it some noise? Was it an animal making a funny noise? They don't actually go out and touch it and see to confirm what it is.
Right, yeah, and that is a problem. I do advocate that people who do investigate the paranormal to be very thorough and objective in trying to find rational explanation for such things.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt. But what about those people who don't believe, who are skeptical, but do have an experience? So let's say
personal experience is irrelevant because it has to be confirmed. Because people on drugs have personal experiences. People on morphine have weird personal experiences. Drug addicts, alcohol, coffee, sickness. It can all make your brain see and hear things and experience things that aren't real.
Okay. I don't know how to respond to that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. When you take a group of people that don't necessarily believe in the paranormal or ghosts, they're not trying to find ghosts, they're not, actively looking for them, yet they have them. I believe there's a lot of cases that is. Now, it could be what Cailleach suggested. It could be drugs that they're on. There could be other environmental factors or other factors, but you have to kind of dig through them, and that's what I want to do on this show tonight. Hopefully we can find some scenarios, out there that will, bring some thought processes in, but we'll see. But before we do that, we're going to go over to Katie and see what she believes why people experience things and others people do not.
I look at it from a different perspective. I believe that as children, we all have psychic senses. We all have psychic abilities. We all have abilities to see the paranormal. And I think that it's the Monday to Friday, the 9 to 5, the Easter Bunny, Thanksgiving, Santa Claus, that the societal norms that we're raised to believe is what kind of shuts it off. And to simply put it, there are people who can walk into the wilderness and never see a wild animal in their life. And then there are those that can go out and see the rabbits and see the deer and see the birds. Does that mean that it is not there? And I think that it just comes down to whether you're open to seeing it. I agree in the sense that, if you say that it's not there and you don't believe it, you're going to shut your mind off. But if you're open to it, I believe that you are going to allow it in a little bit more. And we, as a paranormal team, we spend 95% of our time debunking things. And I have to agree that, yes, it can be the creaks in the floor, the mouse chewing in the walls, the draft in the windows. But then there are those that you cannot explain. We use an abundance of paranormal activity as equipment, as well as normal everyday equipment, not just things that paranormal investigators purchase. And when we can't come up with an explanation as paranormal investigators and correlate it with my feelings as a psychic, and we have other sensitives on the team as well. And when we can correlate that, that's when we can come to a better conclusion that it's paranormal. But I personally don't believe that if you imagine it, it's going to be there. I think we live in a physical world and we're used to physical things, and that's just it. The paranormal may not necessarily be a physical mindset. So.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting, and that definitely could be what's going on. What I see, and when I do these shows and I have these discussions, is the definition people have of the paranormal maybe differ, like Cailleach suggested. The Webster's definition is something like the psychic phenomena or a ghost sighting, something that's outside the scope of scientific explanation or understanding. So if that is what the definition is, then applying science or any type of critical thinking or objective investigation into it will not work. So what I've done personally is say the definition of the paranormal may be incorrect. It may be something that science can understand at some point, but we may not fully understand. We have to find something to investigate. Now, that's where the conundrum is, I think. But we do have to get past all this pseudoscience, all these false claims that are going on out there, because I believe that if there is paranormal phenomena that I've experienced that I believe is unexplained, I can't be 100% sure that it was a ghost.
Can I interrupt you there for a second?
Mm-hmm.
The thing as well, when people say it's unexplained, then it's unexplained. It just means I don't know what that was. But people say, it was unexplained. It must have been paranormal. It must have been supernatural. If it's unexplained, it means I don't know. Doesn't mean it was a ghost. It means I don't know. And that annoys me.
Well, yeah, I understand why it does. And, this brings me back to saying inner truth. The people have inner truths and outer truths. And outer truth is something objective. It's true whether you believe it or not. And inner truth would be like, I believe in God. I believe that experience was spiritual, stuff like that. So we're gonna get into this, but I did want to bring up that the definition of the paranormal is so widely different for people, as you suggested in the beginning. So that, I think, is a big problem, and people don't realize when it comes to trying to apply science or critical thinking to the subject matter. And I want to know. I already know what Cailleach thinks. What do you think, Brandon? When defining the paranormal, is that a problem?
I mean, when you say paranormal, I mean, he's right. It's a it's a numerous things. I think when people are out there, there's different categories of the paranormal. I mean, there's telepathy, there's ESP, there's clairvoyance, there's precognition, there's psychokinesis, there's the survival hypothesis, there's near-death experiences, reincarnation. So when we say paranormal, it's a big thing. But if you start breaking things down in the smaller categories, I think the definition becomes, when I say telepathy, you know what that is, right? Well, when I say paranormal, that encompasses all these types of things. So, I get what he's saying about it being vague and encompassing, and I agreed with that. I just think people, as far as getting better educated on what A, B, and C is, even when it comes to ghosts or ghostly encounters, there's numerous theories about ghosts, earthbound spirits. There's psi. There's ghosts as telepathy. There's ghosts as subconscious hallucinations, unresolved grief coming out. There's numerous theories behind what ghosts are. To just say they're earthbound spirits, or just say they're A, B, and C, or the skeptical misinterpretations of ambiguous stimuli, all this other stuff. It's such a complex phenomenon that there's numerous theories to kind of help us to push in the right direction.
Right.
So can I ask you, Brandon, what do you think a ghost is? Because you've written books on it. What do you actually think a ghost is?
I just wrote one book. In the book, I go over a couple theories about what I think it is.
Are they theories, though, or hypotheses?
Well, I want to just clarify. I think that when we look at ghostly encounters, I think that I don't think there's one theory that explains everything. And I think it's really naive for people to say, oh, every ghostly encounter is a demon or an earthbound spirit or something like that. I think there's different things that happen at different times. My theories are more psi-based.
They're not theories.
My hypotheses are more psi-based, and the fact that I think that it's not necessarily an earthbound spirit hanging around just like, oh, hey, look, there's Zach Baggins. I'm going to jump out and say something to him.
So what do you think they're made of? What are they?
Well, when I say psi-based, I don't mean like a ghost in a spiritual sense.
Right.
Psi-based is more, my theories or my hypothesis are basically the idea that the environment holds telepathic distress signals that were sent in the past, and that certain people who are more sensitive or environmentally sensitive can sometimes pick up on these things.
And what substance or medium carries that information?
What medium? The environment.
Substance or medium carries that information, and how can we access it?
Yeah, the medium would be the environment. Just like everything, like, let me ask you this. You believe in radio signals are out there, radio frequencies are out there. There's the electromagnetic spectrum that's out there, right? All these things are really things that exist. I think when we look at these types of things, we can say that they surround us at we're surrounded by all this, right?
Wi-Fi and all that.
So, these are things that are invisible that we don't know are really around us right now.
Right, so how have you concluded that they do exist then?
Electromagnetic spectrum and the radio frequencies?
You did know ghosts.
Oh, I think we're crossing. We're not speaking on the same thing right here. What I was saying was there's these invisible things around us, like radio frequencies and EMFs and these types of things, right? Yeah. So they're around us. They're invisible. The only way we detect them is because we have the technology to do that, EMF meters or frequency meters or something like that. The question is, are there ghosts or things around us at all times? I don't really have if I could say that with 100% accuracy, I would solve the big mystery. Yeah. But my speculation is that maybe these things are in the environment. The environment holds enough energy to sort of maybe possibly have this stuff out there, but we don't have the technology. We don't have anything like that to sort of like we do with radio waves or EMF to sort of pick that up. Maybe there's certain people out there that have that sort of biological antenna that can pick up on stuff in the environment that other people just don't see, like Katie or someone has that environmental sensitivity. And when they pick up with it, that's usually when you have an encounter of some kind.
Right.
So I don't want to pinpoint this to say, well, ghosts are this substance, this, and this.
Right.
But I think that there's a lot, because I can't, you're right. But I think there's a lot of data out there. Crisis apparitions are probably, for me, the biggest indicator, where I wake up one random Tuesday night and there's a vision of my aunt saying goodbye, and then I find out that she died at that time.
Right.
How do you explain that?
I can't.
Oh, is that paranormal?
No, I don't know. I can't explain it.
Is it? So if you can't explain it, then it's paranormal? Because you just define paranormal as being unexplainable.
No, if it's unexplained, it's unexplained.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Paranormal, if you say it's paranormal, then you're trying to explain it.
Well, I would say that would fall under some sort of telepathy of some kind.
Right.
Communication at a distance without communication like phones or something like that.
Right. Well,
So these types of
tested and it fails.
Yeah. So, and I don't mean to monopolize, but that's what I see is like, hey, this is great evidence that something like this happens. We have a spontaneous case of a person who's never had a paranormal experience. They might not even believe in paranormal, but they wake up one night and their aunt is floating above their bed saying goodbye. And then they find out, hey, my aunt died at the same exact time.
Right.
I don't really know what else to call that besides some sort of telepathy, distress signal, or anything like that. They're not drunk. They're not doing anything like that. That's a genuine paranormal experience.
But with 7 billion people on the earth and how many there have been in the past, for someone to wake up one night, for someone to die, it's not that remarkable. It's bound to happen at some point to someone. What would be more remarkable is if it never happened.
I mean, okay. I mean, I can understand probability-wise. I don't have the stats for that, but there's numerous cases of this. There's 653 cases in Phantasms for the Living that was published.
Yeah, 7 billion people isn't a lot, is it?
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that if it happens at the same exact time, you have a vision, you have all these other sort of collaborating data. I would be hard to say. I would tell if someone told that to me, I'd like, oh well, it's bound to happen sooner or later.
Also, when you just wake up, your brain isn't fully awake. If you're not fully awake and you experience something like that, and then you find out the person's died, then you'll try and work it into what you think you saw or what you dreamt about, and make it add up.
Well, again, that was just an example I pulled out of my butt.
Yeah, right.
There's numerous cases where people are wide awake, sitting, watching or reading a book, and an apparition comes up. Right. I have one where this guy was on the computer and his wife just showed up, and so I mean, I would agree with that. There could be some misinterpretation at times, and I would never rule out all this stuff as 100% real. But I think there are cases that can kind of point to this happening.
All right, guys. Before you take over the show completely with this, I love that interaction. I want to give Katie a chance to do this, but before that, we do have to understand that coincidences aren't always some mystical thing. Sometimes it is a coincidence, like Cailleach suggested. Sometimes we need to figure out if it isn't. If it isn't, we need evidence of it. So if we can create some type of statistical chance, and then see it rise above what the statistical chance is to a degree, whether we are confident that it's not coincidence, then we can start looking at it. That's the kind of research we need to advocate on this show, and we need to come to the conclusion. Are you both in agreement with that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh sure, yeah.
All right.
It's above chance.
All right, Katie. when it comes to coincidence, or when it comes to trying to correlate what people perceive as a paranormal experience with actual data, what is it that you do?
When it comes down to, I want to kind of reiterate about the radio analogy, because I think it's wonderful. I tell my clients all the time that I speak of the radio waves, and I talk about how just because the radio waves are in the air and you don't hear a radio at the moment, it doesn't mean they're not there. And you basically need a conduit in order to receive the radio waves and hear the radio. And I believe as psychic mediums, and everybody for that matter, if they really work on it, that if you work on heightening your antennas and receiving the information, that the information is there for you to receive, and you can get messages through. Paranormal is not something that you can singularly define. I think that, if I was to say the shade of purple, a color purple, what's to say that everybody's going to pick the same shade? I have to agree with both gentlemen, because I think that in one instance, people jump to a conclusion. I think that we have been made through television and through, the social aspect, that we believe paranormal is one thing. But I think really we have to get past the sensationalizing of it and get to the reality of what paranormal is. And it's something that is not physical. It's something that you can't physically, tangibly hold in your hand. And I think this is where our brain kind of misinterprets things. So people are looking for a physical apparition, and that doesn't normally happen that way. I think for myself, I've been able to correlate with many clients that I've had and many investigations that I've had. The information that I give them, I ask for the validation back, whether it's weeks, months, years, and they're able to give me what I was given back. I can talk about a picture that a spirit is giving me, and they can produce the picture. And so to me, that's enough physical evidence, if that's what you want to call it, for me to validate that I'm on the right track. I think that we continue to go to the physical aspects of things, and we have to realize that it's not a physical dimension that we're dealing with. It's beyond dimensions. I think that we need to not so much focus on the physical aspect of trying to calculate statistics, but more variables of where it's occurring, how it's occurring, and when it's occurring. And from there, I think that we're going to find more evidence, and we're going to open our doors. If you looked back in history, for many, many years, the world was flat. They believe that wholeheartedly. The world was flat, but through evolution and education, we determined that is not the case. But that was our history, and I think that we are at an educational point in this world that we still haven't hit it yet. We're still going to be developing more scientific equipment. We're still going to be developing more theories, and I think the veil is opening. In other words, we're going to be continuing to learn. It's just a matter of when.
Right, and I like the analogy that you had, believing that the world was flat. When you talk about that, there was dogma in place to resist scientific evidence and observation. Do you think that there is dogma in place now to resist the existence of ghosts and afterlife, so on and so forth?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we are... I don't like to disrespect religion, but I think everything has a standpoint. When you think about when you get up in the morning, every morning you have a routine. Most of us have a routine. We get up, we do this, we do that, we get out the door, we go to work, we do our daily task, and so on every day. And when we get out of that routine, we're uncomfortable. So if we were to present something that made somebody uncomfortable that they can't tangibly hold or conceive in their mind frame because their mind has been set, I think it's going to, for a lack of a better word, upset the masses. We're in a time in this life where we are questioning everything that we're doing. We have knowledge at our fingertips, whether it be the internet or through communication that we didn't have. And so gradually, slowly, we're starting to educate ourselves and being more open to it. But I mean, women and men were burned at the stake for being herbalists hundreds of years ago. That wouldn't be something acceptable today. But back then, that was their belief system, and that's how they chose to carry it out. I think now we're opening ourselves up and we're learning more and more. So it's not a matter that the possibilities aren't there and that the paranormal activity isn't there. It's just we don't have a conduit to pick it up on a frequency that we can see on a constant basis. So it's investigators like us that go out and try and collect that evidence and try to find a hypothesis of what exactly is going on. My psychic senses and my personal opinions are two separate things. And I think a lot of the general public don't realize that as a psychic, I argue with myself all the time. I know that sounds crazy, but my personal opinion of evidence and my psychic opinion come up with two different conclusions sometimes. And I could think that it's, the wind moved the door. And so I come to that conclusion. But when you do the test, when you check the air, when you check the temperature changes or the EMF fluxes, you're going to notice that there was no temperature change. So, is it psychological or is it something physical that's happening? But it's not something that we're going to physically get our hands on.
Right. That's awesome. All those things I definitely agree with. And before we go, we're going to actually go to the comments, see if there are any questions, do some shout outs. But I wanted to tie this first initial debate and conversation up with knowing what we need to test is key. Okay. We'll have a hypothesis. We go in, use the scientific method, for example, to examine whether this is occurring. If we need to adjust the hypothesis or something in the variable, independent variables, sure. But we're going to talk about if we are applying the scientific method correctly throughout the paranormal community, the investigative community, and why that hasn't appeased the skeptics in the scientific community yet. We're going to talk about that. But before we do, we're going to go over to the chat. Let's do some quick shout outs on Facebook and YouTube and see if there's any questions. I'd be very surprised if there wasn't.
If you want me to do all of them, it's going to take more than a quick second.
Shout out the patrons and shout out the average viewers real quick.
Okay. I have Derek Schreiner. I have Bill Davis. I have Josh Bender. I have Sandy Griffith. I have Heather Elliott. Matt Benton is watching. Candace Niemeyer is watching. That's all I'll do for right now. I do have a couple of questions.
Okay. Before you ask them, we're going to go do some shout outs real quick on YouTube, and then we're going to get to it, right?
Okay.
Go ahead, Jess.
Okay, we have Craig Williams, Raw Uncut Paranormal, Scotty Fox, Val, Jen Rogue, Jay Boggs. I want to butcher this name, and I already apologize. Carl Immense. And that's it for right now. All right. Glenda just joined too. She just popped in.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Go ahead and give us the question. Give us your best question for Facebook right now.
Okay. For the panel, since everyone's brain electrically fires differently, what's the chance that there are people in the world who will never experience anything they could consider paranormal or unexplained, making them a skeptic?
Right.
I don't know enough about neurology to answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know enough about neurology to answer that.
I think it's fair to say that you have not had a paranormal experience or something that happened that's unexplained. You seemingly have explained away anything weird if that's happened to you, right? Oh,
yeah, because I've not seen anything that psychics or mediums can do that I can't do without paranormal.
So
Katie said about the painting. I mean, that's easy for a magician. A magician will do that 100% of the time, every time, hit after hit. With a psychic or a medium, if they do a reading and they get a 70 to 80% hit rate, they think that's a good night. If a magician got a 78% hit rate in fooling an audience, that's a bad night.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sorry, I need to switch to the right screen here. Yeah, that's a good point. So what my understanding of the question was, if you have not had an experience, you have all the reason to be skeptic, and you have a good reason to believe that it's nonsense or just not real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we really do know that it is nonsense. I mean, that there are establishments all over the world that will pay Katie and Brandon hundreds of thousands of pounds if they can demonstrate it. Can I just give a few examples? There's a place in Canada, the Skeptic, Quebec. They'll pay $8,000 if you can prove any mediumship, ghosts, or anything like that. The Czech Republic, $160,000. China, the Simanan will pay $157,000. India, USA, the Independent Investigations Group will pay $100,000 if you can demonstrate it. There's places all over the world. New Zealand Skeptics will pay $70,000. Belgium Skept, the Cyphers Prize is $30,000. You know, and when you say to them, go and do it, the normal response is, I don't need the money. But then you go on their website and you see that they charge $125 for 60 minutes. So they do need the money, and even if you didn't need the money, go and do it. You'd be well renowned, and you could give the money to charity, help the homeless, help the elderly, help children. I mean, the total amount around the world, if you can go to every one of them, comes to nearly $3 million. And then also the Nobel people will pay out as well, and you would be well renowned. If there was anything to go there, go to these places and take the challenge.
Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about why it's not been proven yet. That's definitely going to be something we're going to talk about. Brandon, real quick, do you want to give it some different insight on the question?
I would kind of agree that I don't know enough about neurology to kind of go into all that. I will say that when we look at certain populations, we see that they have more paranormal experiences than others. I think even when I talk about my environmental sensitive stuff, that doesn't mean that people who aren't environmentally sensitive don't have experience. I don't really think the firing of the brain and all that is, I mean, it can be correlated, but I don't have enough that I would go out on a limb and say something like that.
Yeah, I don't even know if anything remotely like that has been ever researched at all. But I kind of get what they're saying. You know, with all the insanely amount of factors involved with how the brain works, the complexities of how the brain works, is pretty much what they're saying. If they just haven't had a paranormal experience, they would have a legit reason to believe that it wasn't real. I think that's what they're alluding to. Yeah,
and I think that we're all different. Why are some people having more as opposed to others? I don't have the definite answer to that. But
I'm losing here, people. I'm losing it.
Getting dizzy there.
Sorry. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, but
I'm back.
I think that's. I think it's a great question. It's too good of a question.
Right. So, Katie, anything else to add on that before we ask some more questions from chat?
I have had, in terms of readings, for me, I have conducted hundreds of readings. I have helped many people without taking payment, and I have too much evidence and too much validation to say that it's something I can pull out of my hat. A magician does something physical. They take a physical object and they make an optical illusion. The difference between me and a magician is I don't have something physical to make that optical illusion. It simply comes into my mind and I'm able to validate it with something. So, for example, reading somebody and telling them something that nobody in this world would know, how can you say that that is a magicianry? You can't say that. And I respect what you do. I think that's a wonderful thing, but I think that with enough evidence in terms of validation with all the clients that I've ever had, whether taking payment or not, and I just want to confirm and clarify something, as a paranormal team, we do not charge any money for investigation. So when I go into a location and I take a read on it, there's no charging there. We don't charge money for cleansings or for any investigations. In terms of my business, I didn't decide one day I wanted to start reading people. I chose to do this because I say fate or the universe basically said this is what you're doing. And so I took it on because it was helping people. I have been able to help people find closure. I have been able to help people find dead loved ones. I've been able to help people find wallets. And I think that even having an 80 to 90% accuracy rate, and I'm not saying myself, I'm saying within psychic readings, I think is a phenomenal thing. There are people who are not psychic, quote unquote, and can't find their wallet, as an example. So, magicianry has its place, but going in to take these tests, I think it comes down to integrity. I don't have to take a test to know that I can see it. I don't have to take a test to know that I can help people.
That's a good way of getting out of it.
Oh, there's no getting out of it. Not at all.
Magicians can do what you do.
Sorry?
Magicians can do what you do better. It's not just about physical objects. There's different methods you use. There's cold reading, warm reading. It's so easy to do, and it's easy to do well as a magician.
Okay, so I guess I'm misunderstanding, because I call people who do cold readings and who do acts like that con artists. I don't call them magicians.
Well, they do it for entertainment, so they're not conning anybody.
Right. Okay, I understand.
I mean, on your website it says that you can talk to dead animals, dead pets.
Absolutely.
So what language do they speak?
There's no language. It's like saying when you pass away, you only speak Spanish or you only speak English. So I get a download, essentially. I get a download, and the download comes in. I'm able to verify how I received the information.
Two things that most mediums or skeptics fail on is they never know the full name of the dead person. It's normally just the first name, unless you know the client well. And also, the person coming through is nearly always English. When you look at the three biggest countries in the world, China, India, and Pakistan, think how many more of them are dead. There's never one of them at the front of the queue. You never get an English psychic talking German or Chinese or translating from the Chinese.
I do all the time, time. I do readings across the world, and I'm able to give them words. I don't speak the language, and I'm able to give them words and phrases, and even writing in different, for example, Chinese, I'm able to draw the picture. I have no idea what it means.
You do that now?
I'm sorry?
Can you do that now?
Oh, well, no, not unless I'm connected with someone.
Right. So you can't do it online?
Yeah, I do lots of Skype readings online.
Can you do it now then with one of us?
No.
Right now, we're not going to conduct an experiment, but by all means, if you guys want to link up after the show and see if you guys want to, test out, each other's claims with their abilities, by all means do that. And that's kind of what I was wanting to get to, is why we haven't produced these extraordinary, abilities and claims, and the proof of those claims, and appease the psychic or the skeptical community and the science community. Why haven't we done that yet? And I think that's the question. And before we go to break, we'll go back to some more questions from the chat. But before we go to break, we're going to talk about that just for a few minutes. Katie, we're going to let you answer this. Why is it, do you think, that skeptics and science have not seen evidence that convinces them yet of these things that you talk of?
I think in a lot of ways they have, but science in general, I think, has a certain way of thinking. So, again, we go to the shade of purple. I think that, again, I'm a skeptic. I walk into an investigation with an open mind frame, but I'm not going in expecting to see paranormal activity. And I think that no matter how you want to slice it, somebody's belief system is their belief system. It's whether or not you want to prove it or not. Who do you want to prove this to? I'm not out to prove anybody I'm a psychic. I'm not out to prove that, it's where the paranormal activity essentially is coming from. There's many different words for it. For me, it's gathering evidence and presenting evidence. And from there, your clients come to the conclusion. So for me, giving readings, I don't know the person I'm giving a reading from the hole in the wall, and I certainly don't know the people who have passed away from a hole in the wall. So I give them the information, and it's up to them to it makes sense to them. It's not meant to make sense to me. As far as science, I think we're just on the brink. It's coming. And I think that slowly but surely, we're going to start convincing the science community that it exists. I mean, they're doing tests at different universities throughout the world. I mean, parapsychologists, they're devoting, a lot of their life. That's a heavy education to this, whether it's debunking it or proving it's actually there. So, I think it just comes down to time. It will happen.
So to kind of condense what you're saying is you personally don't try to convince or produce any evidence that would appease them. But I think the question was kind of more generalized, maybe not geared towards you, but why isn't the paranormal field, produced anything yet for those the ones that are trying, like the parapsychologist?
I think that the paranormal community as we know it is a very general community. There's parapsychologists take a lot of schooling. It's a lot of education. I have a high respect for that. But you get a lot of background teams. You get a lot of members that can buy some paranormal equipment, and they're going out and they're producing things that are not paranormal. And I think that we have to come to some sort of a scientific basis or generalization and come together where para-unity comes in and try and find, something general. I just think that, it takes, we have to learn more, essentially is what I'm saying. It just doesn't come down to putting an audio recorder and trying to collect DVPs. I think that we need to kind of get more of, I'm trying to think of the word, but timelines, precedents, setting limits of things, and so that we can gather the information and as a collective and go through it, if that makes sense.
It does. More data gathering, less trying to put your own personal beliefs onto the research you're trying to do, and just, doing the whole confirmation of your own biases and stuff like that, right?
Exactly. Okay. Yes.
Brandon, real quick, what's your take on why the even in your case, the parapsychological field, what is it that we haven't reached yet to get to the point where we're looking at actual evidence for the skeptics in the scientific community?
Well, I mean, I think there is evidence that the evidence for psi is very convincing. And when I talk about psi, I talk about telepathy, precognition, those types of things. Studies have shown significant results supporting psi phenomenon. Recently, a major journal, the American Psychologist, published experimental evidence for parapsychological phenomenon, a review. Psychology Today just had an article out, which basically the doctor who was writing it was pushing towards this idea that there is a lot of significant research articles out there, meta-analysis, which give very good evidence that these types of phenomenon are happening, telepathy and these types of things. Meta-analysis of the Gans fields, several meta-analysis. There's millions or trillions to one that some of the probabilities that they come up with. And I think that when we talk about the paranormal, I think sometimes we all have these beliefs and views, but we don't actually sit down with the journal articles and actually read what's out there. Dr. Jessica Utz, who is the president of the American Statistical Association, this is a big deal, all right? This is a bunch of statisticians sitting in a whole conference room during her presidential address, basically said, using standards applied to any other area of science, it is concluded that psychic functioning has been established. The data is quite strong statistically and would be accepted if it related to something mundane. So here we have the president of the American Statistical Association basically saying that statistically a lot of this psi has been proven. Now, I think a lot of times, and this goes for skeptics as well as believers, I think a lot of times data antidotes more or less trump data. I've never had a genuine paranormal experience. I'm not a person who sees ghosts. I'm not psychic. I don't claim to have any of these types of abilities, but I do have the ability to pick up a journal and read. And I do have the ability to sort of look over some of the statistics in there. And there is a convincing argument that telepathy, and I'm a proponent of telepathy or communication at a distance, but precognition, these types of things, there's evidence that suggests that it's statistically significant. Sometimes, like I said, 1 million to trillion to one. So do we just poo-poo this and say, oh, it's just people, it's just parapsychologists, they want to believe this. It's just this person that wants to believe this. I mean, like, not to repeat myself, but this person is the president of the American Statistical Association, and the presidential address says something like this. I think we need to take this into account, that something is there. Now, is it to the point where, you can develop technology to have this happen all the time? I mean, Michael Persinger did a lot of research, and he was able to sort of have two people. One person, I think, was in the States. The other one was in, I think, somewhere in England, something like 3,000 miles away or something. And he was able to show that their brains synchronized, right? And information was passed. He did this under experimental conditions. He published this article in a respected journal, and he's done 2 or 3 experiments like this. I'm not a magician and I'm not a psychic, but like I said, when scientists and researchers have shown the synchronization, I don't want to sit on the side and say, well, that's not true. I think that it's important to really read, and to answer your question, I think there's a lot of evidence out there, research articles and respected journals, that show that there is some significant evidence for psi.
So, dare I say this before we get to Cailleach, because I know Cailleach's eagerly waiting for our break. Do you think that the skeptical community and the science community is almost dogmatic in the way they influence and their expectation of what evidence that they ask for? Do you think it's analogy that when we started believing that the Earth revolved around us or orbited the sun instead of the opposite, do you think that there's some type of resistance? Has the science and skeptical community started resisting this almost like dogmatically?
Sorry, me you talking to?
Yeah, you can answer that.
Sorry. No, I don't think that's not how science works. Science will look, and then it will just publish its findings. It doesn't say, right, is there ghosts? It doesn't say, is there psi testing? It just looks to see what something is. What's that? I don't know. Let's have a look. That's science. Then they'll publish what they find. And in these examples, I mean, the psi testing is one of the biggest failures ever. I mean, the James Randi Foundation has been going from 1963 to 2015. It's finished now. And they had, the biggest thing that the test that they had was psi testing, was telepathy. And it failed every single time.
What did they test? I don't understand. What did they do?
Crystals and telepathy, trying to move stuff. Distant communication, it failed time and time again. It had no better, it didn't succeed any more than chance alone.
James Randi tested that, or that?
Yeah.
So he has which journal? That's in an article or journal?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. If you happen to know what that is, I'd love to look that up.
I've got so many notes.
Oh, no. Well, afterwards, we'll get it.
Yeah, I can talk to you afterwards. And
that's fine.
I like to go on both of you. I mean,
now we're talking. Now we're comparing notes.
Well, I'd like to know where the information's coming from.
Right.
You know, not to say, and I don't want to interrupt your answer. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just from the James Randi Foundation. You can go to their website. And they've got,
So their research is going to trump all the other research that's out there?
No, not necessarily, but I think you have to look at it, and then that'll help you come to a conclusion better, I would think.
Oh, sure, yeah. You would take but you seem to just be going with his, because you're like, his research says this.
Yeah, I'll probably have slightly biased.
And you negate all the other research that's been out there.
I don't negate it, but
Gentlemen, if I can interrupt for a minute, I think this is precisely what is going on with the scientific community. I think that people have made their minds, and just as you gentlemen are talking, I think, James Randi, I've read his research, and he's got something going on there, and I've read the research of the telepathy and all these things, and I think it comes down to people forming an opinion. And I think that once you get your mind set on something, and we get into that habitual mind frame, that's where we've made the conclusion of our decision. And I think that, we have to kind of shut that off and trying to be open with a skeptical mind. So be an open skeptic rather than shutting it off and saying it's not possible, it doesn't happen.
No, I'm not shutting myself off. Brandon was talking about research notes and journals and reading the material.
Absolutely.
The James Randi Foundation test it physically with the people.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to read something, but it doesn't mean it's true. Let's test it. Let's get the person and show us what you mean. And it failed.
I think Brandon was suggesting that there were tests that were being conducted as well, were they not?
Well, what I was suggesting is that's one, but if we're just going to use one person or one foundation, then we're not getting the whole
exactly
picture.
Right.
If we use all the research, and that's what meta-analysis is, it takes all the research or experiments that have been done over the last 20 years, combines them, and then comes up with an analysis of that. So meta-analysis is which is combining all the research out, even ones that failed, and comes up with a conclusion and does the statistics for that. Now, if I'm a skeptic and I just point to the Randi Foundation as my evidence, I'm just using as an example. Then that's where my beliefs are going to come from. If I just use the John Edwards, Sylvia Brown research, then as a believer, then I'm going to lean towards that. So I just like to take a bigger view of things. That's all. And I will gladly read whatever research James Randi did. I wasn't aware of it. I knew he does the challenges, but I didn't realize there was an article that he did. I had no idea. And I would love to read that. So we'll talk afterwards.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break. I know there's a lot of people on the panel and probably watching that needs to go to the bathroom and get a drink, myself included. So stick around. We're going to be gone for about 5 or 6 minutes. There's some video promotions you can watch. We'll be back in about 6 minutes, so don't go anywhere.
I apologize, Justin. I'm not.
Room over here? What the fuck, dude?
Whoa.
That's weird.
You didn't do anything, right?
No, it's No, he opened that door and then went off.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just run out of there?
Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
Dead light. For those who aren't afraid to see what lurks in the night.
What was that?
I don't know. I feel like I can't breathe in this room.
Generally, Justin, when you guys investigate, do you just take long pauses and wait to see if you hear things and observe everything that's going on?
It depends on the location and our experience with the location. So in this case, at Waverly Hills, since we've been here before, we've heard a lot of stories, done a lot of research, and investigated, we typically like to listen a lot because we hear the coughing, we heard it last time, so we can hear it again.
Effects of prolonged isolation. Helplessness. Brain stimuli decreases. Now, what happens when you put a man isolated in 3 paranormal infested buildings for 3 research into the paranormal. Push the door, please.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Supernatural Symposium. Hopefully you got a nice cold drink and you're ready for another hour of us bickering back and forth. Hopefully we can reach a conclusion. If not, then we can agree to disagree. But the objective here is to try to see what where each other's coming from and understand why some of us believe, some of us leave our minds open, and some of us just don't have that in us to believe or be open-minded about what we call the paranormal, and specifically on this episode, paranormal encounters. Now, we're going to get back to the questions. Hopefully the girls have some written down. Let's go to YouTube. Jessica, is there any questions that you had written down that you thought was good?
Actually, there hasn't been any questions. The chat has been talking amongst themselves along with a discussion on the panel. So there's no questions yet, but they are very intrigued with the discussion that's going on.
I'm happy to hear that. Missy, is there any more questions from Facebook that you thought were good?
Well, basically, I've had like two, and they both sum up the same question, and they're for our skeptic this evening, and they want to know, would anything change your mind?
Yeah, evidence would.
Well, be more specific. Let's make you work tonight. Elaborate on evidence.
Demonstration.
What about like a personal experience? What if that wouldn't change your mind?
No, because as I said earlier, things can affect personal experience, and kids have personal experience of Santa. That they have personal experience of the Tooth Fairy. Alcoholics have personal experiences of what I was going back to earlier with different drugs, and when you're tired and caffeine, sickness, half asleep. You have to verify the personal experience.
All right. Well, have you had an experience that you disbelieved for the reasons you mentioned?
That I disbelieve?
Yeah. Did you see a ghost, or did you have what people defined as an experience and said, "Oh, no, still don't believe"?
No, I honestly don't think I have.
Okay. Well, fair enough. I thought I would just see if I could pry a story out of you.
No, I'd love to say something, obviously, but no, I honestly don't think I have.
Fair enough.
When I was a kid, I've been thought I saw something, but
may I ask, have you ever experienced an EVP? And have you ever experienced an EVP, and what's your opinion on it?
What is it?
An electronic voice phenomena.
No.
So you've never done any recordings? Have you ever tested any theories whatsoever? Have you ever, I understand that you're skeptical, but have you ever tried to make sense of what other people feel it is?
When you hear these recordings of funny noises and stuff,
and voices.
But you don't know what it is, do you? You only think it's a voice because you're listening for a voice. So you'll try and make it match up to sound like a voice. But it could be anything. You don't know what it is. It could just be interference on the stuff you're using to record it. It could be dust on the microphone. I mean, you don't know what it is. When you'll never get a recording where someone goes, "Hello, how are you?" It's never that clear. It's how are you? It's something like that. And you don't really know what that is. It could be anything. And what have you eliminated all the other things it could be as dust, or just because you want to hear a voice, you're going to try and make it make a sound? It's like when you play a record backwards. There's loads of YouTube clips and people who play records backwards, and you can hear something. When they do it and they don't tell you what to hear, you can't hear it. Once they tell you, listen to this, and it says it sounds like I'm buying licorice, and you hear it, it goes, I'm buying licorice. And you hear it then. Once you're told what to hear, you'll hear it.
Well, that brings up an interesting thing when when Katie asked you, do you try to go out there and, with paranormal investigative groups to see if they can validate anything while you're there? Do you go out and, try to do,
I have been. I haven't been out with an investigative group as such, but I have been to where people say somewhere's haunted or they've seen something, and I've stayed there. I've slept in haunted hotel rooms, graveyards, nothing.
So, do you think there would be any value for you to go and try to use the same equipment, like a recorder, a camera, try to capture anything?
Not really.
Why not?
As I just described, you don't know what it is you're capturing. When you capture that odd sound, you don't know what it is. You're none the wiser, really. But if you have a belief, then you'll make whatever you've recorded match that belief.
Right. That's pretty fair to say. What I try to do when I go out is not so much. I don't believe that I can prove it's a ghost or a spirit or whatever. But if it's anomalous, if it's something that's there that's not supposed to be there, that interests me. I think that's a step forward in paranormal research.
Earlier, with the radio waves and all the waves and the Wi-Fi and all that and the spectrum and all that, how do you know it's not just picking up that magnetism, radio waves?
What we do is we sweep the area with sophisticated equipment to ensure that that's not what's going on.
Right. You can't eliminate. You can't eat the background radiation.
Background radiation from the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Well,
please pick that up. A static screen on a TV. Some of that is the background radiation.
Okay, so you're saying that comes across on, like, say, an EMF meter. You're saying that?
Yeah, it could do. It could do. It hasn't been eliminated, has it?
But that's what EMF meters are for. So we, most paranormal teams go in and they will take a ground reading. They will take an ambient reading of the location before you conduct the investigation, and that way you're getting the natural or unnatural EMF spikes there, so you know what you're looking for. So, for example, if you're going in a basement and you come where there's a power supply, you're naturally, you're going to go there and realize that there's more EMF emitting from it.
Right.
So what she said was, if you go into a haunted house, you pull out your meter and you're looking, there's nothing. You stay, and say if you stay there for a day, nothing.
Yeah.
So you establish some kind of baseline. That's what you're attempting to do.
Right. But then if you suddenly find something, you don't necessarily know what that is.
Right, but we can establish a baseline, and if something goes above that baseline, then we can say that's anomalous. But we want to see that. We want to replicate that.
You'll just align that anomaly to whatever your belief is.
Well, I try not to do that. Some people do.
Of course, we all try not to do that. But
all right. Let's see if we can get into an interesting conversation. I know we talked about trying to, figure out why there's no evidence, and I think to sum that up is there's some research studies that suggest that there is evidence for some things. There's other research that suggest that there's not. Do you think that the variations and results from these different tests and experiments and research endeavors, do you think there's a reason why there's different results? Do you think it's just because we put our own biases in, we bake them into it?
Amongst other things, and it's because we don't know what it is. Because we don't know what it is, we don't really know what we're looking for. So we can't know what it is that has been found. You know what I mean?
Right. But if we're testing for something specific, like a hypothesis, we're testing a hypothesis, and we're just trying to get data out of that test to prove or disprove the hypothesis, that's pretty straightforward.
You would need to test it hundreds of times, not just once or twice.
Right. So you would agree that it definitely needs more testing than we've seen.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to become a theory, it has to be testable and repeatable.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to get to. Yeah, do you think there's a lack of funding that could be a factor in why there isn't, replicable experiments?
No, I think it's because you don't know what it is you're picking up with these recording devices. You won't get, you rarely, if ever, get the same thing twice. It'll be a slightly different noise the second time. It won't be the same. It won't. If you hear someone saying hello, it might be someone saying cheese the second time or something like that. You'll never hear the same sentence twice on these recordings.
Well, I was specifically talking about the legitimate research, not some average guy with a recorder.
It's difficult to convey it. I don't think. I think if you begin to research it, you're already biased towards it, I think.
Okay. So you're saying it's impossible not to be objective?
I think it's certainly very difficult, yeah.
I can't argue with that, but I think that there's definitely... I think it's possible that we can. I think we... Antiquity and history has proved my point, when Einstein came up with the theory of general relativity, the astronomers went out to predict and see if the starlight would bend around the sun, and in fact they did. They're not going out there believing one thing or the other. They just made the measurements and reported them like we.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's what we need. That's what we need.
How many people on this panel have gone out and tested to see if they got fairies at the bottom of their garden?
I have not. So, Brandon, what's your take on this? Do you think that we just haven't done enough research and try to replicate some of the tests that you had brought up in the parapsychological field? What's your take on this?
The paranormal?
Well, there's, like I was saying before, there's a lot of convincing evidence that it's a legitimate phenomenon. As everyone was talking about EVPs, I would have to agree with. Am I saying it right? Cailleach, is that right?
Cailleach, yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with him that that's really something that's very challenging to rule out all the environmental things that are happening there. There's so many things that are going on that it's really tough to do that. So that is a line of research that, in my opinion, is virtually, I won't say impossible, but extremely difficult to validate anything like that. I mean, you could take that stuff to a lot of not researchers, but people who can validate those things in audio programs. That's a tough one to really come up with a conclusive data or evidence on. But it is what it is in that sense. If we're talking about like parapsychology and psi and telepathy and those types of things, when you go into test a hypothesis, you to some degree a hypothesis is in a way an opinion. You have to come up with. Yeah. So my hypothesis for my research was environmentally sensitive individuals will report significantly more paranormal experiences than the controls. And then I go in, do my research, and I have to say whether I proved that the hypothesis or disproved it in a way. So you go in with a hypothesis as an expectation of what the results will be. And the idea is that the researcher is not biased in a way that they're going to manipulate the data to come up with whatever. So we have to trust to some degree a lot of the scientists and experimenters out there. That's not just for parapsychology. That's for everything from the FDA to the drugs to everything we got to trust that they're not messing with the data to come up with whatever the heck they feel like it. So that trust, it's difficult. It's difficult for me. Sometimes I read research articles and go, where's the money coming from? Like pharmaceuticals, those types of things. So I think there is some bias involved in anything, not just parapsychology, every sort of discipline.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it is. I would point to a lot of research out there, Persinger, Dean Radin, these types of people who have done pretty concrete, solid experiments that have been looked at by people in all kinds of disciplines, from physics to chemistry to engineering, who have said, they've seemed to have developed a pretty solid method and design, and the results say this, and their conclusions are this and this, and it's put in a journal, and it's reviewed by peers, so this stuff, that's why you put it in a journal, so it's reviewed by peers to point out flaws. That's really what's out there. That's the method we have, and that's the best we got.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's a few. I think Shannon Morrison made a point in the chat. It's all about being convinced. It's not all. Sometimes you don't even need to go out and test it yourself. If the source of the claim is something you already trust, you kind of by default believe in what the source is telling you what reality is or isn't. If James Randi came along and said, Cailleach, ghosts are real, I just did a research study and we have found it, brother. And Cailleach's like, really? Oh my God. Maybe. But
look at it. Look at what he's found.
Yeah. But you should. That's what I'm saying. You should go out and replicate. You should, if someone says Pluto has, a moon, you want to go out and take a telescope to see it for yourself. There's a lot of people out there that have not even done that, but they believe that Pluto has a moon.
Yeah, but people don't it doesn't affect people's lives, Pluto having a moon, does it? Psychic mediums affect lives.
Probably not in a significant way. Yeah. Maybe in a complex way, it could.
Also, going back to Brandon, who's studied psychology, yourself how fragile the brain is and how easily it can be fooled, and that we look for patterns. Our brains look for patterns. They look for faces, they look for sounds, but to make sense out of a mess or chaos. It's a defense mechanism through evolution, because we'd rather see the tiger's face in the grass than not, because if we don't, we're going to get killed by it. And we try to see patterns.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that's 100% true.
We're always going to be slightly biased to see and hear what we want to see and hear.
Yeah, but again, we have to look at that from both views now. If you're skeptic and you believe a certain way, you're just as guilty as a person who's a believer, So let's not just say, well, skeptics are okay, but believers and parapsychologists are. Yeah, I just want to make sure I said that.
Katie, where does your opinion fit into this conversation presently?
I have to agree with Brandon, I do agree about having the skeptic side of things, and I do agree that you can't just come to a conclusion without doing the investigation first. But I do think that, pareidolia has a big effect with it. Yes, matrixing, yes, your mind does go to certain images, or the brain waves, come to conclusions. But I think when all is said and done, when you've collected and correlated the evidence and you've gone through it and you're able to, I'm not talking about a garbled EVP or a dusty image or a dust particle that claims to be an orb. I'm talking, class A, disembodied voices, something that is not questionable. You have something tangible there that you're able to do more research on. And I think if we can, again, collect that and keep the investigations going, keep these scientific experiments going, I think we're going to get somewhere.
So what equipment, I know you're talking about EVPs, and that's probably one of the most popular and most used research fields in the paranormal. What equipment would you suggest that people use? Like, what do you use, and what do you suggest you use in the methodologies on validating EVP?
We all carry audio recorders. We've done some experimenting with infrasound. We have done experimenting with sound frequency, so high pitch frequency, low pitch frequency, whether it be like an organic, like a Tibetan singing bowl, or digital. We use electromagnetic field detectors. So whether it's you want a fancy word, Mel meter or K2 meters. And basically, we're collecting all of that data, and we're not necessarily looking for paranormal, but we're also looking for the organic reason that would be behind it. It just doesn't come down to an audio recorder. Do you want to go digital sound, or do you want to go analog sound? Do we go back to the white noise? Do we go back to, I think that we have to focus on equipment that is not set for the paranormal and see what conclusions we come from that. When you pick up a piece of paranormal equipment, your mind is already at the paranormal standpoint. So you pick up, if you want to call it an EVP recorder, but what about old analog recorders? They're simply doing the same thing, but it's not psychologically the same thing. So I think it's doing experimenting with things that are not paranormal equipment, if that makes sense.
It does. So what to be more specific, what type of audio equipment do you personally use and would suggest to others doing the same research use?
For EVPs, I like non-directional microphones. I like something, the more expensive the microphone, in my opinion, unless you're doing infrasound, I find that it's going to, you're looking for background noise. You're not looking for something directional. So we've experimented with both, and we find that it's better to pick up EVPs that way. We use static recorders. We've experimented with cell phone recorders, analog recorders. And honestly, I feel like whatever you're getting the best hits with, that you can come back and you're picking things up with, is something that's going to work. We can have two of the very same recorders and they don't collect the same data, where something's collected on one piece of equipment and it's not collected on the other. So it's all experimenting. We're continuing to experiment. I don't think you should stick with one piece of equipment. I think that you should continue to use many different pieces of equipment.
So what you're saying is there's never one piece of equipment or one type of recorder that works?
No, there definitely is, but I don't think we should limit to that. I don't think a paranormal team should purchase an recorder and simply stick with that.
Because it's working for you, it's not work. Okay.
But I also think that part of the scientific discovery, part of the investigation, is experimenting with different types of recorders. Mm-hmm. How can you expand the investigation if you're just stuck with one thing? It goes to say you could take it back to 8 tracks, to records, to CDs, to tapes, whatever. It all plays music, but it plays it differently. You know what I'm saying? You're picking up different things. You're hearing it at a different wavelength. And I think that it's important to keep experimenting and collecting the data with different pieces of equipment. So it's not necessarily canceling others out, but you're adding to it to see what works better and to see if that matrixing effect is in fact happening.
Interesting. So in your personal research, what have you found works for you in your research group?
We have a couple Panasonic recorders that we use. They're handheld audio recorders. We have a larger, I can't even think of the name of it right now. It's a static recorder, audio recorder. We have an analog recorder that we use. That is an old JVC. Yeah, I'm dating myself, JVC recorder. And we find that they work. Sometimes we'll experiment with cell phones as well to see what we can pick up.
So when I asked you if you would suggest that to somebody, you wouldn't because it may not work for them? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think that you have to experiment. I think, what works for one person is not going to work for another.
Right,
I think it's personal opinion, essentially. Some people prefer directional and some people don't. I personally don't prefer directional microphones. I want something that's going to pick up the overall ambience.
Right. The reason I ask that question is science would say, okay, I took this Panasonic recorder, I got an EVP in this place at this time. Maybe it only happened once, maybe it happened 10 times. Someone would need to come along with that same recorder and get the same result. So if that can't happen, then we can't scientifically replicate that phenomena. So do you see what I'm saying? Do you think that's important to do that?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think going to a location and investigating it one time and coming up to a scientific, the scientific conclusion that it is in fact haunted. I think that there's more. If you're really wanting to get down to the nitty gritty, you have to visit the location several times to collect your data at different times, at different, you have to, there's a lot of data that needs to be collected. I think that in the scientific community, if we can do that, if we can send our data findings in, I think we're going to collect more information.
Right. What I'm really would like to see in the field is what they're asking for. Now, I don't know if it's possible for, like, say, if I took a Zoom recorder, went to the Waverly Hills, got an EVP that I thought was an EVP, something anomalous, gave them the same recorder, have them go in. If they couldn't do it, no matter if they did it once or 10 times, they would conclude that it's not substantiated. There's no way that they can determine or substantiate that what you got is able to be replicated. So do you believe that what we're getting EVP-wise can be replicated? Do you actually believe that that's possible?
Yes, I do. Okay. I do. In fact, we have been able to collect evidence multiple times in certain locations that we could come to a conclusion that it was the same. It may not have been the same exact words, but it was the same tone. It was the same phrase. It was the same accent, as a matter of fact. So, I can't say 100% what the EVP collected in terms of words, because again, the pareidolia, matrixing, all that occurs, but I can tell you that it's the same wavelengths. And from there, the more data you collect, I think the more that we're going to conclude.
Do you have a database where it can be peer reviewed and they can see your data?
A lot of our, I could certainly get something going. A lot of our data we try to keep confidential unless we have a release form from the client. So when we go in, we have an interview process. They sign papers, and a lot of people don't want it to be known. If I can get that permission, then certainly.
Yeah, that's what I want to definitely be working harder on this year, is having a database of just our personal data so people can go through it. Brandon, is that something you think that's very important that we do, is start, allowing our results when we go out and do our paranormal investigations to be peer reviewed? They can, like, say, go on our website, for example, and take a look at it themselves and have access to it, kind of like being very transparent about what they do.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think when it comes to anyone who's out there doing paranormal investigations, whether that's groups or whatever, I think what you really have to do is take a step back and look at consistency. And so if there's 300 paranormal groups in Ohio or in the United States, they should all have a process that's pretty consistent. So you should be getting the same information. You should be using the same equipment. The variables of what you're doing should be pretty similar. And then you could take all the information you get, put it into an Excel sheet, and do some sort of statistical analysis on it. You might find that, whatever your team looks at, whether it's EMF levels or just simple demographics, the more questionnaires you gather, the more consistency. So even let's say you went out and let's say over a course of a couple of years, you had gathered 1,000 questionnaires from people who had haunt type experiences. Right there, that's something that academia would be interested in because it's actually a questionnaire that has some information on it. What they do with it is, I'm not sure, but anytime your sample size is big, then you can get information from it. When I did my research in Edinburgh, I had a sample size of 253 patients, which is big for a psychology experiment. But so if all the paranormal groups got together, had some sort of consistency, had a database, did everything together, then I think at that point, the data could be used better. Right now, a person sees something or gets an EVP, puts it on Facebook. It goes on Facebook. People look at it. There's 50 people saying it's the greatest thing in the world, 50 people saying they can debunk it, and then it goes away after a week. There's no point in it at this point unless there's some consistency to it.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. What I'm seeing is a lot of people out there doing a lot of work, but not the data that they're getting, they're not presenting it or, leaving it available for not only peer review, but like you mentioned, to enter it into an Excel and get all this data so they can cross-check and see if there's any trends with, any of the environmental factors. That's what, I would love to advocate on this show, and I advocated across the board in the paranormal research that I'm doing in the other shows. And why do you, Cailleach, why do you think that paranormal investigators don't do that? I think I know what you're going to say, but why do you think that we're not doing it? Is it because we're just hobbyists, we're not trained, we're not educated scientifically to do it, or we're just lazy?
You don't really know what you're looking for. And again, as Brandon kind of said, there's so many variables. Mm-hmm. And you just don't know what it is. When you don't know, you don't know. And that's what it needs to be. That is the only conclusion, is we don't know. And peer review does have weaknesses, but it is the best system we've got. and there is no peer-reviewed articles on any of this. Not conclusive. Not at all. No. Too many variables. You'll again. I keep going back to it, but you will look for what you want to find.
So why don't you think that the data is not out there for us to look at? Why don't you think so?
Because we don't know what we're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
But even if they didn't know what they were looking for, they went out there and put up their recordings. They put up their video. They if they have a data logger that measures the environmental factors.
Because it's not a clarification of what they don't know what it is they found.
Yeah, I will say this though, it's when you look at this, 500 years ago, they were treating ailments with leeches to let blood out, right? Yeah. So those physicians didn't know what they were looking for, right?
Well, they use leeches today.
I'm sorry?
They use leeches for that today.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that. But to some degree, they didn't know bacteria was causing infection.
No.
So they didn't know what to look for. The way they found out what to look for was through consistency, education, awareness, people collaborating, people being on the same page, science evolving, technology evolving. So just saying they don't know what they're looking for, it's a process of trying to find what they're looking for. And in order to find that, the people who do the investigations need to be more focused on specifics. And then once the specifics, if you can correlate, hey, every time there's a ghostly encounter, there's an EMF of 14 milligauss in a cold spot, and it's always on the second floor, and it's this. If you can correlate all that information and it's consistent, every time I go in there, this is what's happening, this is when the paranormal, then you know what you're looking for. Then you spread that out to different places.
But you still haven't found a ghost.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you could be more specific and know what variables go together with a ghostly encounter, then you could pick those. You could be more specific and detailed in what you pick apart. It could be just a brain malfunction.
Yeah.
Right? So go ahead.
Well, what Brandon's saying is the correct application of science, a protocol, consistency is what we need.
Exactly.
And that's what led to doctors stop using leeches for diseases and led to pharmacology and more productive and useful medical practices. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, and it's like, well, they don't know what they're looking for. But back 500 years ago, they didn't know it, and it developed, and it became what it is now. And this is for technology and phones and things like that. But they didn't, to just say, well, they don't know what they're looking for, so let's give up. To me, I don't see the benefit in that. As a human, I always want to keep, if I don't know what it is, that's what piques my interest and go, holy moly, I've got to find some sort of answers to this. To just say, it's unexplained, and then walk away and then go back to my normal world. To me, I have trouble doing that.
But how do you know it's not a natural phenomenon rather than a paranormal one?
I don't, but to just say it's unexplainable and walk away is, to me, ignorant.
Right. But you could investigate it, and most of the time it is, well, I won't say most of the time, all the time, whenever they've actually looked and checked it, it's been a natural phenomenon. See,
you can't say all the time because you can't rule out every experience that's out there. That's just black or white thinking, and you're putting yourself in a corner.
In the universe, so surely by definition it's natural.
Well,
I'm sorry.
What he's saying is, if it's actually there, then it's natural. If there's actually a ghost there, then it's natural, right? Is that what you're saying, Cailleach?
Yeah, it's not outside of nature then, is it? If you could demonstrate a ghost, then it stops being paranormal or supernatural.
Exactly.
It's obviously part of nature.
Exactly. That was my point earlier.
But you still won't know what that ghost is. Some people might think it's a dead person. Some people think it might be another universe slightly out of sync with ours. It might be aliens with some advanced technology beaming stuff about.
I love the way you think. I love it.
But see, I think the difference between me and you is then it's like, well, I don't know what it is, so I give up. I think it's the opposite, that you keep going until you find that answer, whether it's aliens or whatever else you were saying.
Yeah, and we haven't done that, have we? No one's done that.
Let's do that starting right now. Let's do that.
Well, if we're talking specifically about ghosts, then we haven't done that.
No.
But there are numerous hypotheses out there which shed light on what those unexplained phenomenon could be. Right. When it comes to other aspects of psi or paranormal, like telepathy and those types of things, I think we have been more specific and detailed and found out some answers there. But again, that's my viewpoint from what I've read and everything. And I understand that that's not mainstream's view of it. And I honestly, I've gone an hour and 45 minutes here. I used to be an adamant skeptic. When I went through my graduate degree in psychology or clinical counseling, I thought all these people who had ghost encounters were misinterpreting things. There was mental illness. I had all this stuff going on. And it wasn't until I started opening my eyes to the actual journal articles and research that I thought, well, maybe there is this. And if telepathy exists, that opens the door. If consciousness isn't just something that's brain circuitry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. You say that they misinterpreted or illness or whatever, and then you looked into it and you examined it and, talked to it about it, but you still can't actually explain what a ghost is. Because I did ask you at the beginning of the thing, can you tell me what a ghost is? And you couldn't.
Well, I think you're asking me an impossible question, because you know what my answer is going to be. If I knew what a ghost was, then I would be a millionaire. I have my hypothesis of what it is. I have some evidence that suggests what I think it could be, or data that suggests this. I'm not on the show on a soapbox saying ghosts are earthbound spirits and that I'm the ghost whisperer. And I'm not saying something like that. And I think because if you go to someone, and this is a typical thing a skeptic will do, what's a ghost? What's a ghost? Tell me what a ghost is. Tell me what a ghost is. I can't answer that question. And I think you know that. That's why you keep asking me that. So I'm not going to sit here and give this 20-minute spiel about what I think ghosts are, because I can't prove it.
How can we look for something when we don't know what it is? If you don't know what a ghost is, how do you know what you're looking for and whether you found it? You can't know if you found something if you don't know what it is.
Okay, Cailleach, I'm going to answer this question. We've been talking
about this for 30 minutes. It's 2 hours I've been answering that question.
This is what I do. Okay, this is what I do. I go. Okay, someone tells me that in March we're going to go to the Rhodes Hotel in Atlanta, Indiana. There's claims that it's haunted. Okay, there's stories, all that stuff. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to see if I can experience what they experience. If I can see what they saw, if I can feel what they felt. Now I'm going to take equipment that measure things. I'm going to see if there's any anomalous environmental readings that I can correlate with anything that I saw. Right. Because if you see something, it could be the brain. If two people seeing the exact same thing, probably not a hallucination. You can probably say they optically both saw that, because the chances are of them hallucinating the exact same thing is statistically not good. So that's what we do. What I personally do is I can't prove if it's a ghost, but I can say, okay, I saw what they saw. There is something to it. There is something maybe worth checking into. Yeah, I can't tell you what it is. We can only tell you what it appears to be.
Yeah.
And I don't suggest and advocate that people go out there and tell you what it is, or say they have proof of things. And I think that will appease you if I advocate that, if I put that out there.
Yeah, and also regarding haunted places, hotels make a lot of money from a haunted room. They're always booked.
They're not the only ones, Cailleach.
No, that's right. Haunted houses and all that. Yeah, a lot of places, but pubs and especially the old-fashioned pubs in England, they make a lot of money from it. Yes, they just make a lot. Right. I mean, if ghosts as dead people existed, there'd be billions of them everywhere. People that see ghosts, they'll see it at night, or they'll see it when they're under stress or having problems or something like that. You never see it at 7 o'clock in the morning when you're getting your kids ready for school. You never see it when you're lying on the beach on a sunny holiday, walking out to sea.
Yes, you do. There's a whole book called Phantasms of the Living with 600 some spontaneous cases that have just the thing you're talking about. So you just have this idea, and you're not opening your mind to all the other case examples that are out there, because people just don't have it when they're drunk, or people just don't have. There's people that have it, people walking in the middle of the day and have some sort of apparitional experience. I just think that, you could pigeonhole this whole thing, and I don't want to monopolize. I'm going to step back.
So can I turn the tables for a minute?
Please.
And I just want to ask, what, instead of, so you say that you're skeptical, and I completely respect that. May I ask what investigations, what equipment, what experiments have you done as a skeptic to come to the conclusions that you do not believe? So what investigations have you done to come to that conclusion? Do you have something that we could look at that would state why you feel it's organic? When you say it could be environmental, what things have you concluded that would cause that environmental? Like what equipment do you use?
You're talking to Brandon, yeah?
Cailleach.
No, I'm talking to you.
Oh, I didn't say it was environmental.
Well, you said that a lot of it is not. I'm sorry, I correct myself. Natural phenomena. So, what equipment do you use to come to that conclusion? So, is this opinion, or is this your opinion, or have you done scientific experiments to suggest that it?
No,
I guess what I'm saying is, instead of proving that paranormal exists, how have you proven that it doesn't? What experiments have you done?
I haven't proven that it doesn't.
Okay, so this is your opinion then.
I've never claimed it doesn't.
Okay, but so when you've gone to places and you say that that people have had their experiences, what have you done to disprove it? What experiments? Like, I'm curious. What experiments?
I haven't done anything after the event.
Oh.
What is there to do?
Well, you're saying that it's natural phenomena, but okay. But
when someone tells me something has happened, I've been there and set up cameras to record, and there's nothing. Nothing's ever happened on the camera.
Okay, so you've taken your own cameras and you've done experiments. Okay, so same with EVPs and same with
only cameras.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he did mention that he would go spend the night in these locations to see if he would experience anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether he documents it like say me and Katie does, probably not. But he does, he went and checked himself.
I'm not on my own either.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say, gentlemen, that the paranormal is an exploration. I think explorers shape the world, and I think that we're on an exploration right now. So to conclude that, scientific experiments are being concluded, yes, of course they are. But I think the key word is exploration. We're only on the verge of it. And I think that if we continue collecting data, we're going to find out more and more.
No, but I don't think that's true. I don't think you do think it's exploring. You think you can talk to the dead already.
Well, I know I can.
So in what form do the dead exist then? Because I'm not an expert on being dead, but I do know that being able to speak is not part of that.
I don't understand. What he's asking is, how do they speak to you? Now, you'll probably say something like as an empath or as a telepath. That's how they speak to you.
Well, it's they come in various forms. So sometimes it's like a download. They can download images. Sometimes so I tell people I'm clairaudient, clairscient, clairvoyant, clairconscient, and empathic.
But you must speak to the dead people. So can't you ask them how they're existing? How are they able to talk to you? Where are they? How are they existing and able to speak?
It's more like a download. It's more like a download. So it's like I have asked questions, but it's kind of like a download. So they download the information into your brain and you relay the information.
So what energy are they using? What is their energy input I don't get it. How are they existing? In what form?
They exist in a if you want to call it a different dimension. We live in a physical dimension. They're living in a different dimension. So it's the energy is transposed. So we have physical, tangible items.
from one dimension to another?
I'm sorry?
How can their energy or their voices come from one dimension to another? How does that work? You must have asked them that.
But it was through the veil, as they call it.
The veil. What does that mean?
Through the thinning of the veil from one dimension to the other.
But how?
They're able to they're able to push the information through like a radio wave.
Right. Well, it is a radio wave, is it?
Well, it would be. I would consider it like a radio wave. It doesn't go in one direction. It's the same as an EVP wave. They go in all different directions. But yes, it comes in directions.
It's spending energy, so they need an energy input. What is their energy input?
Usually they use EMF to try and manifest. Usually that's what they use. EMF will. I'm sorry?
As soon as they speak, they're wasting energy.
Right.
So their energy input. You need more energy input than output.
The energy comes through as a download, and I'm able to give them the information.
The energy that they're using, how are they sustained?
The energy is never. It's not destroyed. It only changes. So they're using that ambient energy.
But what's the energy input? Because if you only have output, they would cease to exist after a few seconds. As soon as you move or speak or do anything, you're using energy. So you need more energy input than output. What is their energy input?
I look at it like trees. Trees give us oxygen, and we receive the oxygen. So it's the same type of principle. So the energy that is being expelled is also being received, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense because I don't know what the input is. What is their energy input?
He's asking what their food is.
I know what the energy input is for a tree.
What do spirits eat to maintain their energy output? That's what he's asking.
They use EMF.
So the way Katie's answering you is they use the ambient energy either in their dimension or our dimension as food.
Yes, thank you. Better answered.
Well, what sort of energy is it? Is it nuclear energy?
Electromagnetic, and it could be other forms. It could be other forms that science has yet detected.
And how have you concluded that is how they exist?
Through readings and through experiments.
What experiments?
Oh, again, we've worked with playing with EMF. We've made EMF meters. We have made things that actually create EMF. We've we've experimented near power boxes and water sources, and to see where the natural EMF versus non-natural EMF. But we've done different experiments to see where we can pick up the best energy. To see if we can snap photos, to see if there's just simple anomalies that are being collected in the photos. So, is it creating the matrixing effects? Is it creating our mind making a different decision? So, again, I'm getting my psychic download, but I'm turning into the investigator, and we're trying to collect the physical evidence of it.
How do you know that you're talking to dead people and not aliens that are sending these magnetic waves? Then
both would be really cool, though. By the way, both would be equally awesome.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I think just like Brandon said, we could go around this for 20 minutes, and nobody's ever going to know the 100% answer. It goes down to religions, whether you believe in God or Allah or Buddha. I think it comes down to correlating evidence, and again, I receive it as a download, and I go with the information. I started doing readings simply to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I started doing readings, and every time I would do a reading, I would get the validation back. And from there, going through the houses and reading the houses and being able to tell how people passed away, that's how it developed. And so I go with my gut instinct to answer that question.
Okay, we're reaching the end. Pretty much what Katie's saying, that she goes out, she collects her data, she does her investigation, she gets her own form of validation. Whether it's going to convince you or another community is yet to be seen and has not been done yet. But that's how it's validated with her and many others who do it. But the whole thing behind getting it universally objectified and proven has not happened yet. So hopefully one day we get there. Maybe not. But that's the goal, and that's the endeavor. But I want to wrap this up. Hopefully I haven't pissed off the chat, because we haven't. There's probably some questions we didn't get to, but I wanted to see how this debate, unfolded and see what happened. It just boils down to inner truths. Skeptics have inner truths that it does not exist, and they have the reasons for why. Believers have, the same inner truth. They believe that it exists, and they find their own reasons why it exists. We have not yet reached the point in time where we can prove objectively whether it exists or not, whether we believe it. So thank you guys. I'm hoping that we didn't waste your time tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed this little dialogue, if you want to call 2 hours of bickering little. But my words can't convey my appreciation I have for your time and your own endeavors in trying to either prove that paranormal exists or disprove it. And I'm going to follow everything that you guys do. I'm going to take the last couple minutes and let you guys plug anything that you want to plug. So we'll start with Cailleach. Where can people follow your work? Where can people interact with you on social media?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I run a book called Atheistically Speaking with a couple of other people. It's got 16,000 members, and we talk about all supernatural things. It's not just atheist, but Skeptically Speaking had been taken. It's quite a common one out there, so I just thought Atheistically Speaking, because I am an atheist as well, for the same reasons. And yeah, we just try to come and join us.
The link to that is in the description of both the videos, by the way, so you don't have an excuse to find it. Anything else, Cailleach?
Can I just take a second to thank Katie and Brandon and yourself, Jason, for the invite, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome. I'm glad that it wasn't wasting your time. Like I said, Brandon, go ahead and plug away.
Well, you could find me. I have a website called hauntedtheories.com. You can follow me on Facebook at Haunted Theories, Twitter at Haunted Theories. My book is The Ghost Studies. You can find it at Amazon. If you like to listen to it on headphones, it's at audible.com or through Amazon, Google, and all that as well. Google. I don't know all the Kindle stuff, but you can find the book pretty much anywhere, brick and mortar stores too. That's pretty much it. I don't have much else to plug besides that. I will say I thought this was pretty interesting as well. I do like having panels discussions. I think sometimes when you're in the paranormal type atmosphere, when you go to the conferences or whatever, you tend to be around people who view things very similar to you. So it's always nice to talk to someone who has opposite viewpoints on a lot of things, because I think it's only through debate and discussion that we learn things about the other side. Like the article by James Randi, I didn't know it was ever published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. So we find these things out, and I think that's how we grow and how we learn more. Awesome. And I want to thank everyone on the panel too. It was great.
Awesome that you think that way, and that gives me more faith that I'm not wasting my time here. Kate, thanks for joining us. Katie, go ahead and plug away.
Well, I want to thank you guys. It's been a blast. I love the debate, and I think it's really wonderful that we can all sit here and have a chat without exploding, and that we can respect each other's opinions. I think that it keeps us real, and I think it keeps investigating real. So whether we're trying to prove that it exists or trying to disprove, I think that we got to continue our path. You can find me on Facebook, Katie Turner, Sensitive Psychic Medium. You can find me on the internet, www.katieturnerpsychic.com. You can also find our webpage for the paranormal team, which is canadiansupernaturalresearch.com. And tune in. We're starting a new season of Paranormal Survivor. It's on Destination America and T&E. I believe it's also in the UK. So tune in when you can, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, guys. I'm going to wrap up this show. If you want to hang out on the video call, you can. If you got to go, by all means go. But if you leave before I have a chance to say goodbye, I say goodbye to you and good night right now. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Episode 4 is in the books. Hopefully you strapped in, had some snacks and had a drink and was able to digest all of that. Hopefully I was able to air out the opinions, stay on topic as much as possible. Yes, people have experiences, other people do not. The quest continues. Thanks for joining us. All the comments and likes and interaction and engagements in the videos is what keeps me going. But we'll go ahead and check out some links. I definitely want you guys to check out the links that I have for our panel. But definitely check out liveparanormal.com. If you want to look into the paranormal research that my group does, interfacedeath.net, the link is in the description as well. You can follow Live Paranormal on Facebook if you're watching on YouTube. We're going to talk about patreon.com/support Interface Death if you want to help support us that way. You can follow Interface Death on Twitter and Instagram as well. Now, Patreon is a way that you can financially support the video content and production that we do. So if you're interested in doing that, check out patreon.com. The link is in the description. There are rewards for doing stuff like that. People like Clay Borman, R.J. Murphy, Danette Goldtrip, Scotty Fox, Casey Schreiner, Jessica Bias, Bill Davis, Joe Vitale, Heather Elliott, and General Rogue all make this content possible. If you like what you're seeing, if you like what you see in the links and are interested in making a contribution, check it out. So there we have it, guys. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining me. Please check out the guest links. And I think tomorrow we have my Paranormal Soapbox on my blog page, the Justin Brown blog page. So if you would like to see me talk for another hour, you can check that out. On Wednesdays, I have a show called Necromancer Live Show. I just interview one person at a time. You can check that out as well. You guys have a good night. Stick around for the video promotions again if you didn't see them in the break, and I'll see you next time. Do you have that drive? That morbid curiosity to explore the darkness? Do you have what it takes to brave the night? You do? Good.
Dead light. For those who aren't afraid to see what lurks in the night.
Are you in this room over here? What the fuck, dude? watch us turn, Justin, too close.
No,
he opened that door and then went off.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you just run out of there?
Of prolonged isolation, paranoia, depression, helplessness, brain stimuli decreases. Now, what happens when you put a man isolated in 3 paranormal infested buildings for 3 nights in each location, all by himself?
No one to help me. No one to protect me. Just me versus you.
Does paranormal activity increase?
So what do you think of this piece of evidence? I think by far it's the best piece of evidence we have seen here.
That's flat out amazing. And that's something we've never captured.
Oh, wow.
What? Nobody has ever got it on video.
That's creepy.
In 11 years.
So no one's ever caught this on video?
Never. Ever.
Here is my story, and here is what I went through for my research into the paranormal.